Artemis I is officially the most distant object from Earth. Humanity loves to explore. It has been surveying its surroundings since the start of humankind, and since scientists have been able to get into the sky, it has explored every corner of our solar system. NASA is closer to setting foot on the lunar surface in a few years thanks to Artemis I's amazing success. Stay till the end of this video to learn more about Artemis I and its distant object from the Earth. On November 26th, Orion beat the previous record for the greatest distance covered by a spaceship intended to transport people into and out of space. The previous distance record holder was Apollo 13, which covered 400,171 kilometers. On day 13, Orion's lunar orbit sent it to a maximum distance from Earth of 432,210 kilometers. We will look at Artemis I, its distance, and the purpose of the launch. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more stuff before we continue. Click the bell icon to sign up for new videos alerts. Have you already executed it? Let us move on. At the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, Artemis I, formerly known as Exploration Mission 1, will be the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration systems, which include the Orion spacecraft, Space Launch System SLS rocket, and newly upgraded exploration ground systems. The mission's main operational objective is to guarantee the crew module's entry, descent, splashdown, and recovery in safety. SLS will also carry 10 tiny satellites that will conduct their own scientific and technological investigations and launch Orion into its orbit around the Moon. Before the first trip with crew on Artemis II, Artemis I, the first in a series of progressively difficult missions, will lay the groundwork for deep space exploration and show our willingness and capacity to extend human existence to the Moon and beyond. The space economy is built on Artemis I, which supports the emergence of new businesses and technology, jobs, and the need for a highly skilled labor force. Building deep space exploration systems to support journeys to deep space is a labor of love for men and women in all 50 states. Currently, more than 3,200 vendors are helping NASA prime contractors Aerojet Rocketdyne, Boeing, Jacobs, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman reach the significant milestone that marks the accomplishment of America's human spaceflight program. What is Artemis I? This uncrewed mission, formerly Exploration Mission 1, is a thorough test of the Space Launch System SLS and the Orion module. The Space Launch System, which generates 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff and is 1.3 million pounds more powerful than the Saturn V rocket used in the Apollo missions, is the most potent rocket ever created. Artemis I will travel roughly 64,373 miles into deep space after traveling 450,000 kilometers to the Moon, which will orbit 400 kilometers above the lunar surface. The module will splash down in the Pacific Ocean not far from California on December 11th after a 25.5-day mission. Several technology and science experiments that will be conducted in deep space are on board. These are intended to advance technical advancements, shed light on deep space radiation, and increase our understanding of the Moon. 3 mannequins or dolls dressed in the first-generation Orion Crew Survival System spacesuit that the actual astronauts will don on Artemis II and III are also on board. The mannequins have sensors to collect information about potential flight experiences for human crew members. Why is the program called Artemis? The twin sister of Apollo and the lunar goddess Artemis in Greek mythology. Therefore, the connection to the expedition that sent the first humans to the Moon over 50 years ago is obvious. Meanwhile, the crewed spacecraft is known as Orion. One of the most recognizable constellations in the sky is Orion, and in classical mythology, Artemis's hunting partner. Why is NASA going back to the Moon? With Artemis, NASA wants to travel to the Moon and stay there, rather than merely attempting to duplicate the accomplishments of the Apollo missions. Even if the main objective is to send people back to the Moon by the middle of the decade, this entails looking into the feasibility of setting up bases both in lunar orbit and on the lunar surface. Initial launch attempts. On August 29, 2022, fueling was supposed to start just after midnight, but due to offshore storms, it started at 1:13 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Engine 3 of the rocket's 4 engines were found to be beyond the maximum permissible temperature limit for launch prior to the scheduled launch at 8:33 a.m. Other technical issues included a fuel leak, a split in the insulating foam of the connecting joints between the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tanks, and an 11-minute communications lag between the spacecraft and the ground control. After an unexpected hold and the 2-hour launch window passed, NASA aborted the launch. An examination showed that a defective sensor was not utilized to judge the launch readiness and incorrectly reported Engine 3's temperature. A second launch attempt was planned for the afternoon of September 3rd following the initial attempt. The 2-hour launch window would have started at 2:17 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. A fuel supply line leak in a service arm connecting to the engine section forced the cancellation of the launch at 11:17 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Uncertainty surrounded the leak's cause. The quick disconnect interface's liquid hydrogen line was overpressurized during the launch attempt, and mission operators looked into whether this would have destroyed a seal and let hydrogen escape. Launch controllers scheduled the next launch attempt. The earliest window was September 19th, but mission managers later said that September 27th and the September 30th would be the earliest viable dates, now that NASA had successfully fixed the leak. The eastern range of the United States Space Force had to approve an extension on certification of the rocket's flight termination system, which destroys the rocket should it move off course and towards a populated area. This was done on September 22nd. A launch in September would have required that this be done. Launch management, however, decided to cancel the September 27th. Hurricane Nicole caused yet another delay on November 12th, thus NASA's launch managers chose to request launch opportunities for November 16th and 19th. They wanted an opportunity for the 14th, but Nicole, a tropical storm at the time, prevented them from getting one. Due to the low likelihood that wind speeds would go over the rocket's design limits as the storm approached, NASA decided to leave the rocket at the launch pad. With gusts as high as 46 miles per hour, wind speeds were predicted to reach 29 miles per hour. On November 9th, Nicole made landfall as a Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds of 85 miles per hour and gusts of 100 miles per hour at Kennedy Space Center, exceeding the rocket's design requirements. NASA examined the rocket for physical damage and ran electronic health tests after the storm passed. The mission management team got all the clear to start fully preparing for the launch on November 15th, and the primary taking operations started at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time that day. Artemis I was launched using the Space Launch System's Block 1 model. A core stage, 2 5-segment solid rocket boosters, SRBs, and an upper stage make up the Block 1 vehicle. 4 RS-25D engines, all of which have flown on space shuttle missions before, are used in the core stage. At liftoff, the core and boosters create a combined thrust of 39,000 kilonewtons, 8,800,000 pounds, or around 4,000 metric tons. On the Artemis I mission, the upper stage, known as the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, ICPS, is powered by a single RL-10B2 engine and is based on the Delta Cryogenic Second Stage. The Orion spacecraft and 10 CubeSats were launched into a trajectory to the Moon by the ICPS after it ignited its engine to perform a translunar injection (TLI) burn once it was in orbit. Then Orion parted ways with the ICPS and coasted toward the Moon. The ICPS stage adapter launched 10 CubeSats after Orion was separated to carry out scientific research and technological demonstrations. It's anticipated that the Orion spacecraft will spend around 3 weeks in orbit, including 6 days in a distant retrograde orbit, DRO, around the Moon. It's anticipated to have a maximum distance from Earth of 480,494 kilometers, and the closest approach distance of about 130 kilometers, 80 miles, to the lunar surface, 298,565 miles. Moon mission Artemis I of NASA, by traveling the farthest from Earth that a spacecraft intended to transport humans has ever gone, the Orion spacecraft set a new milestone. The uncrewed spacecraft hit the landmark on Monday, April 28th, when it was around 270,000 miles, 434,523 kilometers from Earth. The U.S. Space Agency reports that the spacecraft launched on November 16th from Florida's Kennedy Space Center has flown more than 40,000 miles, 64,374 kilometers beyond the Moon's far side. The previous record was established 50 years ago during the Apollo 13 mission. It had traveled 400,171 kilometers, 248,655 miles from Earth at that point. But after its service module exploded, the crew struggled to find their way back. The Apollo 13 mission, in contrast to the prior Artemis I mission, carried people who made history by being the first people to set foot on the Moon. The Orion 1 capsule will undergo extensive testing as part of the Artemis I mission to ensure it's ready to transport people safely. In order to accomplish this, NASA's larger Artemis program, which aims to send astronauts back to the lunar surface, includes the trial run. NASA stated that astronauts would be aboard the next mission in 2 years if the uncrewed spacecraft completed the current mission. Today's video has come to an end. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. Remember to click the bell icon to get alerts when new videos are posted. I will see you in the upcoming video. Bye for now.